Attorney Romben Aquino is a native Californian, and he is a graduate of UCLA and Northeastern University School of Law. His firm, which is Fong Aquino, LLP, is an immigration law firm with offices in Pasadena and Palm Springs, California. The firm is committed to serving Los Angeles, the San Gabriel Valley, the Riverside County communities, and immigrants all over the world. The firm is devoted exclusively to immigration and nationality issues. They take pride in counseling and working with non-traditional families and same-sex couples. They handle all areas of immigration law, in particular, family-based law, employment-based law, investment-based law, citizenship and nationality law, deportation, defense, and litigation, and presidential orders, such as the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, as we know now, DACA, and also Deferred Action for Parents of Americans. Their clients are from coast to coast to coast and from countries on 6 continents. So they do a lot of work all across the world and all across the country. When Romben, we have met and have spoken several times. In getting to know him, I asked him, what was something he would like me to say in his introduction. And he wanted me to tell you that he feels so fortunate to have had the same mentor now for over 20 years. And this mentor means a lot to him and was able to really help him solidify his passion for this work. In fact, when he graduated from college, his mentor gave him a book, and inside of the book, he inscribed this little short story that I want to read to you because it gives you a sense of who Romben Aquino is. The story is this. One day, I was walking down the beach just before dawn. In the distance, I saw an old man picking up stranded starfish and throwing them back into the sea. As I approached the old man, I asked, "What are you doing?" The old man explained that the stranded starfish would die if left to the morning sun. And I exclaimed, "But there must be thousands of starfish. How can you possibly make any difference?" The old man picked up a starfish next to my feet, and as he threw it to safety in the sea, he said, "I just made a difference for that one." So this mentor of Romben Aquino is J. Craig Fong, and he is his partner at Fong and Aquino. Romben and his wife live in Whittier. They have 2 wonderful children who are great artists. They have decorated his office with all of their artwork. And they also have a Jack Russell Terrier. So let me bring to you this morning Romben Aquino.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so very much for having me this morning. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and to Patricia and to Dorothy, the organizing committee, for inviting me to speak today on this very important topic. The last time I spoke to a room of this many people, I told everyone that what I was going to say would probably make more sense and be more interesting if everyone went to the bar and just stayed there. That speech only lasted 2 minutes, so I don't think I'm gonna get away with that one today. Before we get into immigration, I just wanted to start off with 2 things that sort of guide what I do and sort of try to guide my practice. The first one is a quote from Mahatma Gandhi, all right? "A nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members." So as we strive to make America great again, or better still, I think we should keep that in mind. The other thing I want to read is something that was written recently by a federal judge in New York who ordered the release of an immigrant who was taken into custody suddenly and was not permitted to see his family for several days. And the judge, in her order to release the man, said this: "There is and ought to be in this country the freedom to say goodbye. That is, the freedom to hug one's spouse and children, the freedom to organize the myriad of human affairs that collect over time. It ought not to be, and it has never been before, that those who have lived without incident in this country for years are subjected to treatment we associated with regimes we revile as unjust, regimes where those who have long lived in a country may be taken away without notice from our streets, home, and work, and sent away. We are not that country, and woe be the day that we become that country under fiction of laws that allow it." Ladies and gentlemen, how did we get here? Before we answer that, let's talk about what it was like before. Under President Obama, the Secretary of Homeland Security was named Jay Johnson. And in 2014, Jay Johnson released a memorandum that said, okay, look, this is how we are going to prioritize deportations from the country. All right? We are going to prioritize certain people, and we're going to leave everyone else alone. The folks that we're going to prioritize are these. Number one, threats to national security, border security, and public safety. These are folks that are suspected terrorists. These are folks that are aggravated felons. These are people who participated in street gangs. These are the folks that President Trump would call the really bad hombres. All right. Fine. Yes, of course. We should get rid of those. Number two, certain misdemeanors and recent immigration violators. People with 3 or more misdemeanors. People who have committed significant misdemeanors. This is a term that had not been used previously, but under significant misdemeanors, you have people who are convicted of domestic violence, people who have convictions for driving under the influence, unlawful possession of firearms, drug trafficking, people who entered authorization without authorization after January 1, 2014. Okay? And then number 3 was other immigration violations, and these are people who are issued final orders of deportation after January 2014. So those were the 3 categories of folks that the government said, look, we only have in this country limited resources. We have a Department of Homeland Security, we have immigration judges, and we can only deport a certain number of people per year. And I think somewhere the number I've heard is every year the maximum we could do is maybe around 400,000 people a year. All right. The estimate that I've heard is that there are approximately 10 to 11 million people in the country who are here without authorization or without proper immigration status right now. So of those millions, we can only do 400,000 a year. So we need to focus our energies on the truly bad folks. And everyone else, we will offer what's called prosecutorial discretion, all right? We will grant administrative closure for cases that are not priorities. We're going to join in motions to reopen for folks who may not have had relief before, but now they have relief, and we're going to allow them the opportunity to seek that. And then we're going to decline to go after folks who have significant ties to the United States. People who have family in the United States, people who are involved in their communities, people who have gainful employment, people that live among us that we don't know are undocumented. If they don't bother us, we're not going to bother them. That was the plan. As you all know, this all changed. And as of, well, actually, within a few days of President Trump being inaugurated, he issued an executive order saying, this is what I want to do as far as immigration is concerned. And then in February of 2017, then Secretary of Homeland Security, General Kelly, who's now the Chief of Staff, he issued a memorandum that immediately rescinded the Johnson memorandum, and he replaced the priorities with this list. Number 1, regardless of the basis of removability, the Department of Homeland Security should prioritize removable aliens, people who are not here without permission, number 1, who have been convicted of any criminal offense. Any criminal offense. Jaywalking, we're going to take out jaywalkers. If you run a stop sign, that's a criminal offense. Are we going to take out people who have run stop signs? Are we going to focus our attention on those folks? Number 2, people who have been charged with any criminal offense that has not been resolved. Charged. Charged but not convicted. I thought in this country we had the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Number 3, people who've committed acts which constitute a chargeable criminal offense. Again, I think that's something that is left for local law enforcement officers to determine whether a crime has been committed. Number 4, folks who've engaged in fraud or willful misrepresentation in connection with any official manner before a governmental agency. Okay, still needs to be proven, but okay. Have abused any program related to receipt of public benefits. Okay, should be proven first. Folks who are subject to a final order of removal but have not complied with their obligation to depart the United States. Okay, I can see that one. That makes sense. Number 7, in the judgment of an immigration officer, somebody who otherwise poses a risk to public safety or national security. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what lawyers call a catch-all provision, or the everything including the kitchen sink provision. Honestly, anybody could fall into this category. You know, anybody could be a risk to public safety. Anybody could be a risk to national security. Anybody in this country could fall into that category, and basically this is the category that says, listen, there was a quote last year from Thomas Homan, who is currently the Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and he said something to the lines of, if you are living in this country unauthorized, you should be looking over your shoulder, because we are coming for you. That is not what this country should be about, folks. Let me talk about, you know, given that that is now the stance that the current administration has taken as far as immigration is concerned, which is a federal enforcement priority. We live in California, and California happens to be now a sanctuary jurisdiction. And there's also a number of cities within California that are sanctuary cities. I want to go into a little bit about what that means, because it has different definitions, and there really isn't a legal term. You know, what's a sanctuary city? But before I get into it, I just want to make one thing very, very clear. Just because we have sanctuary cities and sanctuary jurisdictions, it does not mean that people that are undocumented and live in California are safe from ICE. Nor does it mean that they're not going to be taken into custody. ICE can still operate inside California, and they can still do things. But I think what California is saying is, listen, ICE, you do your job, and we'll do ours. We're not going to help you with your job. You guys have your own funding, and you guys do what you guys need to do on your own. But you're not getting any extra help from us. But basically, the California SB 64, which became effective in January of this year, says that California agencies are not going to do the following. We're not going to ask about people's immigration status. We're not going to detain people solely on a hold request from Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It used to be in the past that people were detained in local custody for a certain amount of time, and they would be released. But what ICE would say is, listen, that person's not a citizen, so can you hold them for us for an extra 48 hours? And it used to be that people would, that law enforcement would honor that, and then it got litigated, and they said, you can't just hold people beyond the amount of time that they're supposed to be held. You know, they should be released. California agencies are not going to participate in arrests based solely on civil immigration warrants. We're not going to place officers under the supervision of federal immigration agencies, and we're not going to participate as border patrol. All right. There was a program called 287G, which is 287G is a section of the immigration law, which says that ICE will give funding to local agencies, and we'll give funding, and we'll train local agencies, and we will designate certain local law enforcement officials to have immigration enforcement authorities. And so they would be trained by ICE, and basically these officers would then be allowed to perform work that's normally done by ICE agents, but instead of wearing ICE uniforms, they would have local Pasadena police uniforms, or whatever the jurisdiction was. The problem was this: is that some of the officers who were trained in this way took that authority perhaps a little too far and were kind of targeting people who, well, you don't look American to me, so you must have some immigration violations going on. Under the SB 54, which is the California law, this program is probably not going to be allowed to participate in as far as federal agencies are concerned. Now, there are still things that cities and the state of California must continue to do. There are, we still do have federal obligations. Police and sheriffs are still able to continue sharing inmates' release dates and transferring people to immigration authorities if they've been convicted of. There are certain categories of people that we will still respect ICE's request for transferring. We will hand over folks who have serious and violent crimes, registered sex and arson offenses, domestic violence charges, other felonies, and we will also allow folks, local law enforcement agencies, to participate in what are called multi-agency task forces, where there may be some enforcement priority that a lot of different agencies will collaborate with, but we are not going to participate in ones where the only focus is immigration. If they want that, immigration can do that themselves. It's basically what the state of California is saying. Here's the big one. When someone is taken into local custody, let's say that I did something bad and I'm taken to jail, the first thing that happens in jail is they're going to take my fingerprints. These fingerprints are shared with the FBI, Interpol, all the local agencies, because in addition to whatever bad thing I did, they want to see if I have other bad stuff in my history. Your fingerprints are also shared with the Department of Homeland Security, and that's where they get triggered. Oh, wait a minute, those fingerprints do not match someone who is a U.S. citizen. That's a non-citizen, and that person might be a lawful permanent resident, or that person might be someone who's here unauthorized. But regardless, that's somebody who's not a U.S. citizen. That's somebody ICE would be interested in, and that's what would trigger ICE to say, hey, I know you can't hold that person more than the time that you've been allotted, but can you please tell us when you plan to release that person? And if that information is publicly available, that information must be given to ICE. And as I understand it, what ICE would do is they would send folks to the local jails at 6 in the morning, which is whenever people are getting released, and they would just meet them at the jails and say, okay, you've served your state or local time. Now we're going to transfer you to ICE custody. And so that is still allowed. So I just wanted to spend a little time to go over that and kind of get an idea of, for all the talk of us being a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city, it's not a complete barrier, or it's not a complete protection. There are still things that can happen as far as immigration is concerned. I want to talk a little bit about the latest immigration proposal, or what the guidelines are that the administration is currently looking at. I think that the president mentioned this a few days ago during his speech. What he wants, or what he's proposing, is this: a 12-year path to citizenship for undocumented individuals who arrived as children. At the moment, that's estimated at about 1.8 million people, and that would allow a pathway to citizenship. Well, when they say a pathway to citizenship, what they mean is, first we will grant people lawful permanent residence, and then after a certain amount of time as lawful permanent residents, then you become eligible to apply for citizenship. So it's not immediately that, oh, we're just going to flip a switch and you're automatically a citizen. But we're only talking about 1.8 million people. Earlier today, I mentioned that there are approximately 10 to 12 million folks in this country. What are we going to do with those folks? A lot of those folks are parents of these folks that we want to perhaps give legal status to. So are we going to now separate and draw lines between your kids can stay here, but you have to leave? What are we going to do? Number two, Mr. Trump would like money for his wall. I really don't think we need to be building more walls. You know, as much as walls are built to keep people out, they also keep people inside, yes. Is that really the country that we want to be? I don't think so, you know. But in this taking, you know, in this notion of the wall, that also includes not just money for the physical wall, but it also includes money for increased enforcement, more Border Patrol agencies, more ICE people. So when I say the wall, it sort of encompasses everything. In addition to these two things that everyone's talking about, there are other things that the Trump administration would like. They want to eliminate the ability for citizens to petition for their parents, adult children, and siblings. The only relatives left that we would be able to petition for would be spouses and minor children. I don't know about you guys, but unless you can trace your roots back to a Native American tribe, everybody who is here had a descendant somewhere who brought over the family. And so to eliminate this, the family, you know, I mean, everyone, the term that's used is chain migration, and that, you know, we're this notion that we're allowing people's brother's second cousin's wife to come in, and it's no, it's a pretty limited range of people that we're allowed to petition for. The last thing that they're looking to eliminate is the diversity visa, the lottery. The diversity visa is a mechanism by which countries, people who are in countries that are underrepresented in the United States, can come to the United States and have an opportunity to try to make it to the United States. You know, if you are awarded a diversity visa, you don't have to have family members inside the United States. You don't have to have a job lined up. You just put your name into the lottery. Now, there's the list of countries that are eligible for the diversity visas changed every year. Basically what they do is they look at, of all the people that are inside the United States that are residents, who do we have a lot of, and who don't we have? And so, you know, right now, the countries that are generally not eligible for diversity visas are countries like India, China, Mexico, and the Philippines. We determined we have a lot of those immigrants here, and so we want to give an opportunity for some of the other countries, Norway, Taiwan, and Russia, and Norway. Yes. Eliminating the diversity visa, though, I think runs us the danger of saying that we only want all of our immigrants to look exactly the same, and I just think that's not really where we want to go. You know, so I know I've spent you know, a little bit of time going over how we got here and what the proposals are, you know, I just think it's important. You know, in my opinion, the idea of prioritizing everybody for deportation really seems counterproductive. In my opinion, if the goal is to deport as many people as possible, you can't prioritize everybody, because if everyone's a priority, then nobody's a priority. And the thing is that there's a process involved. Everybody in this country, regardless of citizenship, is entitled to due process. We have a constitution, and that constitution applies to everyone. That means before somebody can be deported and deprived of their liberty to stay in the United States, they need to have a hearing in front of an immigration judge. There are approximately 300 immigration judges across the country. That's it. I mean, they're thinking about hiring more, but each immigration judge can only handle a certain amount of cases. And so in addition to what is already on the caseload, which is already backlogged, the administration wants to add more people into that backlog and say, well, we want to deport more people. So the way we do that is we're going to increase the number of people that are in deportation proceedings. I was just in court the other day, and some of the judges were scheduling people's next hearing dates. Come back and I will hear your case in 2021. So, stay out of trouble, or, we'll see whether or not you can stay in this country when you come back in 2021. So if you add more people into the mix, it's a little like the 210 freeway at 5 o'clock. There's a lot of cars and only a certain amount of lanes, and you can't push that many cars through at the same time. You just can't. So, I think it would be nice if they brought back prosecutorial discretion, because then that would allow the department to decide, here are their priorities, everyone else get off the road so we can push these through. That kind of completes my prepared remarks. I don't know how much time I was given, but you guys have any questions? Oh, okay. While that's coming over, one thing I should say is that before we probably should have said this at the beginning. The opinions and the information that I presented today are entirely my own. The League of Women Voters has no idea what I was going to say today. They did not pre-approve what I said. And so any mistakes and any information is mine alone. So that being said.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Betty J. Ford, and I've been listening to two sides, this side. Then I think about there's another side that's here already. There are people here, and they're never learned English. They've been here 30, 40, 50 years. And it looks like we need to help that group because they get the jobs they need, and they're already here. So we're piling something else on top of something we didn't fix right now. So we have a problem. The people here that don't speak English and they group together in their own, with their own people, not working, and they're getting welfare and everything else. So we really top heavy. I'm not saying don't let the dreamers in or what, because I don't know how we can let them in, who we're going to let in, or who can't let in. So it's really, I'm really not understanding any of it. It's hard to understand. So your speech doesn't help me understand what I'm to do. You're good with it and whatever you said, but it's all mixed up and it's too much to say in this little time we have. So maybe you can fix it.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. What's interesting is that the United States does not have an official language. English is not the official language of the country. And they've done studies previously, and they were saying, I think during the time of the country's founding, that some of the languages that were more prevalent were German. Yes. But to go to your point, I do understand what you're saying. There are a number of immigrants who do come to the United States who speak limited English, and in order to become a citizen of the United States, there is a requirement to be able to use and understand basic English. We're not talking about Shakespearean English. I've been with many clients and we've done the test. It's not difficult English. But the law also provides that if you are a lawful permanent resident over the age of 50, and if you've had a green card for more than 20 years, you can be waived from the English requirement. The government recognizes that there are difficulties in learning English. And because it's not the official language of the country, it's not a requirement for certain people to become a citizen. Now, of course, like I said, if you're applying under the normal standard, which is you've had a green card for at least 5 years and you want to become a citizen, then you're going to have to do the English test. But it's not that hard. Yes.
Can I just respond to
Sure.
her point? I came as a child from Sweden. My parents didn't speak English. Learned enough English. Most of the foreigners that come here, they're entrepreneurs. They don't really go and apply for jobs. They start businesses. Like the Latino community in LA, they're 50% of our community. They work for each other. And they start a lot of businesses. And 80% of jobs for kids, for adults, are small businesses. So it works.
I want to ask a question about funding for legal representation at deportation hearings. My understanding is if you don't have a lawyer, you've got about a 10% chance of avoiding deportation, and if you do have a lawyer, you have about a 90% chance of staying. I believe there was a bill in California that last session, that did not pass. Can you tell us about that bill and whether it's going to be reintroduced this session?
I'm not sure about the specifics of the bill about whether or not it's going to be reintroduced, but you are correct. Currently in this country, people who are in deportation proceedings or removal proceedings are not entitled to a lawyer. If you want to have a lawyer, the lawyer will be, you're not provided one, you have to go find one, and that is at no cost to the government. Immigration proceedings are civil. Where we do provide representation is in criminal proceedings, and that's where you have the public defender's office or appointed counsel. But in immigration, it's not provided. There is one very small subset where they will provide lawyers, and I think it's people who, and it's only I think it's only in the Ninth Circuit, but it's people who have mental capacities, and the government will have to decide, okay, if you go through a certain hearing and they determine that that you are not competent to represent yourself or that you're not competent to go through removal proceedings, they will find a lawyer for you through one of the nonprofits. So.
Service officer and issued a great many visas, but the last visas I issued were 1973. And at that time, if you could get in without a quota number if you were a spouse of an American citizen. And I think that minor children were given a first preference, and then your sisters and brothers were given fourth preference. You mentioned the fact that parents and children might be considered fair game to stay, but other relatives are not?
The current system is this. Immediate relatives, if I'm a U.S. citizen and I want to petition for someone, there's something called the Visa Bulletin, which you referred to. The Visa Bulletin determines that there are a number of different people from different countries who want to come to the United States. We can't take everyone, or we shouldn't take everyone from just one country, because then one country would then dominate all the visas and nobody else would be able to come. So they break it down into categories between countries and also between categories, all right? People who are immediate relatives, as the law defines it, are spouses, parents of U.S. citizens, and minor children of U.S. citizens. These are folks who are not subject to the Visa Bulletin, which means that there is no line, okay? Now, when you talk about a line, who are the people that are in line, all right? The first category are adult unmarried children of U.S. citizens. That's considered category number one. Category number two is broken into 2A, which is spouses of lawful permanent residents and minor children of lawful permanent residents, all right? Category 2B is adult unmarried children of lawful permanent residents. Category 3 is married children of U.S. citizens, and Category 4 are your brothers and sisters of citizens. So what the Trump administration is proposing is, let's do away with basically all those categories. Let's just do away with those categories, and let's just stick to Let's just stick to spouses and minor children. We're going to take out parents of citizens. We're going to take out children of spouses of lawful permanent residents. That's what they're proposing. So does that answer your question? She's been waiting for a while. Okay.
I have a real simple question. In that number of 11 or 10 to 11 million, does that also include people who came over on visitor visas and student visas, of which I know many of those, and they just let the visas lapse and didn't go back, nor were they searched for by the government? I'm just wondering, does that include those people as well?
I believe that number includes those people as well, yes. So
Okay.
it includes people who are crossing the border, and it also includes people who've overstayed. What's interesting is that recently, when you enter the country before, you would come in, they would look at your passport, and if you were coming in as a visitor visa, there was a little white piece of paper called the I-94 that they would staple to your passport. And that piece of paper said, you must leave by a certain date. And that was it. It was a white piece of paper. They've gotten rid of the white piece of paper, and now it's all electronic. So, you know, basically, you're told at the airport, you have 6 months and you have to leave. But that's the last time you're going to remember. And you can go check it online to see, oh, when am I supposed to leave by? But I think what's going to start happening under this new change, and this change happened actually before Trump came into office. Folks who have been in the country, every now and then I'll meet somebody and they come in, hi, I entered as a visitor in 1980 from the Philippines, and I just got married to a citizen. Can I get a green card? Yes, you can. I think we need to see a lot less of those, because if now it's electronic, I think that the government has ways of finding out. Passports are machine readable, so we know when you came in, and if there's no exit, then ICE gets a little notice probably saying, hey, go find someone.
Yeah.
So,
This is the woman that has been waiting for so long right here. So, Cindy?
Yeah, I listened to all this debate, and I realized that the administration has presented a very false choice for us, and he was talking about merit-based thing or people from the shithole country. Sorry for language, but the thing is, I was frustrated the people on the poor immigration side never point out that we do have a merit-based immigration. Because I am an immigrant, I went through the list when I was a student. I tried to figure out which way I can become I can get a green card. One of them is your professional achievement, and then you have special skill. You can contribute to the country, and then you can marry to American, which I happen to be. And then there are all these other stuff. So to say we never pick people who are capable, and then say we only pick people who are lazy and stupid, it's a false choice. And I wonder if like people who are activists who help immigrants should really loudly point out this point, that this is a false choice. And they claim to want to have merit-based, but at the same time, they want to slash the H-1 visa for the worker. So I wonder if you guys have any strategy to fight these rhetoric?
I mean, it's definitely, as far as I know, with a lot of the immigrant advocate communities, I'm sure it's pointed out quite clearly. Look, we do have this in place. This is where I think what the administration wants to do is, let's just wholesale change the entire system, and let's just go straight to a merit-based system. Canada has a point system where Canada, as I understand it, says, okay, if you have a spouse who's Canadian, that's 5 points. And if you have a job in Canada already lined up at this level, then it's going to be 10 points. And if you have a Canadian, if you're going to come to study at a Canadian university, then it's 5 points. And it's all about points. And there's a threshold. Let's just say it's 20 points. And if you make 20 points, you're in. If you don't make the 20 points, you're out. Here's what the question is: how do you weight the criteria? When you talk about a merit-based system where we're all going to level the playing field, it's still going to be gamed once you figure out which categories can get you the most points. It's like a game, right? So it's so I take your point that yes, we do have a system, and I think that what they want to do is let's just change it entirely, which is
So, yes, maybe all the way in the back. Is there a mic? They have the mic, but, oh, okay.
It's line short enough going way back in your presentation. You had an example of a person who would get his deportation hearing in 2021. Where does he go in the meantime? Is he incarcerated? Is he free on bail if he has bail?
Okay. Thank you. Very good question. The folks who are getting their deportation hearings in 2021 are not in custody. They are allowed to continue to live amongst us, and they're just waiting for their hearings. There is a significant portion of deportation offense which is done in custody, and so there are in our area, the big immigration jail is over in Adelanto, and it's run by the CCA, which stands for the Corporation. CCA, Correctional Corporation of America. Yes. Anyway, everyone in there is a deportation detainee, and those folks, when you're in custody, you have an opportunity for bond. You can ask the judge to release you on bond pending your hearing, and if you're released on bond, then you go into the non-detained population, and you'll get your hearing whenever the judge says, okay, I've got a spot for you in 2025, whatever the case might be. But the folks who are in detention, obviously, every day that the folks are in detention is ICE is paying for that detention. So they have an interest in moving the cases along. So those hearings will be done within a matter of 4 months, 4 to 5 months. And so, there is a mechanism. There are mechanisms where things are moving much more quickly than the example that I gave earlier. But those are folks who are in detention, and the government has an interest in moving those quickly along.
So good morning. I just want to ask you about AB 450 that was passed last year. And the city of San Gabriel, we have 80% business owners are immigrants. They produce more than 30 millions every year for our city's tax revenue. But this AB 450, what this says is the employers does not have to cooperate with ICE officers. Means they don't have to give out employees information. If they do that, they get fined, $10,000 fine. So a majority of employers, business owners, they're moms and pops. Once if the A's come into their restaurants, they will be scared. They will just, whatever they want, they will provide. So that's kind of situation right now in our immigrants community. They're all scared. They don't know what to do. So, like you said, state is sanctuary state, but then they don't give full protection. If ICE still can come in. So what's your advice to this business owners?
So this is a side of immigration. The nice thing about immigration is that it's broad, but it also has very discrete areas. So I practice a discrete area that does not include that particular thing. But my suggestion is there are actually lawyers who do specialize in advising employers and employers' responsibilities and employer obligations. And if ICE shows up with a very specific warrant that we are here for this specific purpose, you need to honor that. That is still something that the law says. If you don't honor that, you're going to get in trouble with ICE and the feds. So I mean, it's a very delicate balancing act, and we're walking a tightrope. But that's kind of what the law is, right? It's walking out of the edge of a butter knife sometimes, and it's what makes it interesting.
Hi there. My name is Anthony Manousis. That's a Greek name. My father came from Greece in 1923. He jumped ship because the quota for Greeks at that time was 100 per year. That's because tens of thousands of Greeks had come over in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, and Americans simply didn't want to have any more Greeks or Italians. So I am the offspring of an illegal Greek immigrant. So I have 2 questions. One is about quotas based on ethnicity. I understand that different countries have certain limits on how many people come in. You could talk a little bit about how many Mexicans, for example, are allowed in per year. The second thing is prosecutorial discretion. My understanding was that until Trump came along, there were some criteria that would prioritize who would be deported. So if you had a family, you had education, you were an upstanding citizen, you were at low risk. But if you had criminal activities and other things in your record, you were at a high risk.
Right.
That seems to be thrown out the window. Could you talk a little more about that?
Right. I'll review it really quickly again. Yes, there was, under the Trump administration, there was something called prosecutorial discretion, where we said that if you have significant ties to the United States or if you have long residence in the United States, we will, as long as you don't have any other reasons why we don't want to send you away, terrorist connections or criminal connections, we will leave you alone. So yes, that priority, that possibility was that program was tossed out immediately after Mr. Trump became president. As to your first question, as I understand it, there aren't quotas per se. There's a limit, and it's broken down into regions: North America, South America, Australia, Asia, Europe. And within those regions, there's only a certain amount of visas that are allowed for different countries. Unfortunately, I don't know what exactly the number is, but I know that that's the way that we try not to have one country dominate each of the visas. And once you reach that, 20,000? Okay, thank you, from our former Foreign Service officer. Once you reach that number, then your country ends up in a backlog. And the countries that are currently backlogged are India, China, the Philippines, and Mexico. To answer your second, both of you had mentioned the shithole countries. Here's what's interesting about those, what countries we determine to be shitholes. They change. As you mentioned, in the early part of this century, the country did not want darker Southern Europeans. We did not want Italians. We did not want Greeks. We only wanted people from Western Europe and Northern Europe, and there was a dividing line. So it changes. It's subjective, and it depends on this year Trump says the countries are this. Next year it might be different countries. And then the notion of having it's a really unfortunate term, that's really shouldn't be used at all, because anyway.
So, right here, I'm seeing more.
I just wanted to make a comment that yesterday I was at a conference for social workers and with LAUSD, and one of the things they told us that if ISIS people come to your business or home, they have to have that warrant. If they don't have the warrant, you can tell them, you cannot come into my business and you cannot come into my home. And sometimes it's a trick that ISIS use, and I was not aware. ICE. Yeah, ICE. One of the things that they do is that they will take a piece of paper and fold it over as if it was a warrant. So, just because they say, make sure you see it, businesses, if they want to come to your business, like the 7-Elevens that just got raided. Yeah. So, so just make sure that that is going. I personally have friends, family members that work on both sides. So I do that, and I'm so glad that our pilgrims did not have to go through this.
The other thing that's under a great deal of controversy is that in ICE also, instead of saying immigration or ICE, what they'll say is police. And so when they say police, it's a much different connotation. Oh, sure, come on in. And then, oh, what we're really for is immigration. And so there has been some a great deal of...
Legal? Are they
There's been a
allowed-
lot of back and forth about what they're allowed to say in that regard.
Is that legal? I mean, before we go on, I just wanted to, can they say that, or are they legally?
That's under discussion between... Technically, maybe yes, but...
I am curious about something in this country. I come from a family that was discriminated against, didn't really exactly the right religion. It changed from Jews to Islam now. But I was wondering about what is the justification our government has for having all these laws? I've only heard we are a nation of laws, and we have, but what else is it that they're promoting that is making immigration a detriment to our country?
That's a big one. I mean, basically, the law school answer is we do have a rule of law. There are laws in place, and you're supposed to follow the laws. If you break the laws, then there are supposed to be consequences. And the question then becomes, in my mind, I mean, some law violations are greater than others. Murder, that's that's a big one. I think that there are certain delineations. But in terms of your question, what are we based on? I think it comes down to this is a nation of laws, and we do have laws and procedures that should be followed. But in that as well, if you're going to say this is a nation of laws and you broke the law by crossing the country without permission, then we also need to focus on other laws. We have a constitution, we have the Fifth Amendment, we have due process, we have the right to have an impartial judge determine your fate before we ship you off to your home country. So when we talk about laws, I think we need to talk about all the laws that are involved, not just focus on, well, you broke this law when you came in. Okay, fine. Then if that's the case, we will also give you the full panoply of protection. I think we should also consider that.
If I could just, yes.
I have a question. Is the Trump administration also reviewing the EB-5 investor program? Removing citizenship?
That's also up for review, yes, they're considering that.
Are they considering it?
Yes, they're
What
considering
is it?
The EB-5 program is a program wherein if you invest a certain amount of money, right now the number is $500,000 if you invest in a regional center, or $1 million, and as a result of your investment, you create a certain number of jobs in the United States. You get a green card, and then it's a conditional green card, and then after 2 years, the government comes and checks again, how did your program work out? And then that green card can then become what's called a 10-year green card. It's often called the millionaire visa, but that is something that is also the Trump administration is looking into.
I think you made a really important connection when you talked about the local corporation that owns the prison where all the immigrants are held. It's a private prison.
Right.
Some corporation is making big money on this. And I just wondered if you could speak to the link between these private prisons and the number of immigrants that we are now incarcerating.
Could you repeat the question, please?
All right, the microphone.
Repeat your question.
Oh,
it's recording. He's recording. Is it that microphone? Yes, please.
I think you made an important link between the corporation that owns the local prison where the immigrants are being held and immigration. And I'd just like you to speak to the increased numbers of immigrants that are now being incarcerated and the increased money that the corporations are making by holding them in these prisons.
strangely enough, there is a quota of beds that need to be filled in these private detention facilities in order for them to continue operating. These facilities have a contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And Immigration and Customs Enforcement, Immigration and Customs Enforcement also used to have contracts with other local jails. Santa Ana Jail had a contract with them. Music Facility in Irvine had a contract with them. Theo Lacey in Orange has a contract with them. And basically the contract is this. We will pay you a certain amount of money for you to detain an immigration detainee. With the advent of these private corporations who are now taking more and more of the immigration detainees, yes, there is an interest in these companies to make sure that their facilities are full. And where do they get these folks? From Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So, you know, I think that it's something that no one really talks about, but it is there. There is a link between these corporations and ICE, and you know, ICE wants to, the more people that ICE arrests and places in detention, the better it is for these agencies, because these corporations, because if they don't have enough people in their facilities, they might have to close, you know, so, or they might not be profitable for them to continue operating. So there is definitely that link there, connection. Is this microphone work?
In these same facilities, are these detainees also producing products, commodities? Because in the regular prisons, such as the federal prison, where people are there, some of them, and are these same people that are in the prison lockups that are being controlled by the corporate people, are they also putting them to employment? Because in the federal prisons, some of them are getting as little as 25 cents an hour to produce products for big manufacturers here in the United States. Are they also putting them to work too?
As far as I know, and as far as what I've read is that the answer to that is no. I don't think they're making license plates or anything like that in the private corporations, as far as I know.
And
since many of the undocumented immigrants...
Mike, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're also recording this for public access TV, and for it to be a good recording, we need...
Since many of the undocumented do provide the employment force, the employee force for many of the industries, such as the the migrant labor in Central California, as well as many restaurants on the East Coast, which are highly dependent on the undocumented immigrants, not immigrants, undocumented people. So is there a way for these employers to sponsor some of these people into a legal way of coming into the country?
Okay, I mean, we had the question. There is a way for employers to sponsor employees. In addition to the family-based immigration process, there is an employment-based immigration process, and that also has certain categories of folks that we prioritize versus depending on the higher priorities will go faster. You know, people with STEM degrees, people who are STEM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, people who have PhDs, people who have advanced knowledge in their fields, O1s, exceptional individuals. They can self-petition. They don't even need an employer. If they're that good, they can petition themselves. Here's what the issue is, and then it goes down the list. And so a lot of the folks in the categories that we're talking about, restaurant workers, migrant workers, they're in what are known as other workers, down at the bottom of the list. Here is the issue about employment-based immigration. In order to get a green card through the employment-based system, you need to be in status in order to adjust status, all right? So you need to be in a valid immigration status in order to switch over to another valid immigration status. So let me just give you an example of a way that some folks do it. You come in as a student, and you go to UCLA. After you graduate from UCLA, you find a company that might want to sponsor you for something called the H-1B. The H-1B is a temporary program. The H-1B gives you a visa for 3 years. You continue to work in that company, and it can be extended for a total of 6 years total. At the 6-year mark, you have a choice. You either have to find employment or another visa, or you go home, or the company can then sponsor you for a green card at that point. And the rules are, well, if you're coming from H-1B and transferring into another status, even though the category may be years and years off, as long as you continue working for that company that has sponsored you, you remain in status, and you can adjust status. The issue with a lot of the folks that we're talking about, they're not in status. They've never been in status. And so even if you were to file a petition for them and that petition gets approved and the employer says, great, I filed this petition for you, it's going to become current down the line, the problem is that they're not going to go anywhere with that petition because it's sort of what I tell my clients is it's a brick wall. You're going to run into this wall and you can't go past the wall because you're not in status. Now, a few years ago, there was something called 245I, which is an immigration law that said if you had a petition that was filed for you before April 30th, 2001, and that petition can either be from a family member or from an employer, we will allow you to adjust status when your time comes if you meet the criteria. So even if you're out of status, if you have that petition in place, you also, in addition to the normal filing fees to the government, you have to pay a penalty fee of $1,000 to the government for the privilege of using 245I. But this is what allowed folks who have been in the country and who had that petition in place to become able to get a green card through their family or through employment. But of course, that means that they were here in 2001. And that was 18 years ago now, so 17 years.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to know, for most of us in this room, we're probably concerned citizens. What can concerned citizens do? What is your advice?
That's called the catch-all question. As a concerned citizen, if you are concerned about your neighbors and their families, my recommendation is this. Encourage people that you know that are, and a lot of times people won't tell you that they're undocumented or that, it's something, but if you do know that there's someone who's undocumented, have them talk to a lawyer about what their options are. Some folks do have options, and there are routes toward legalization that lawyers know. Tell people not to talk to notarios and immigration consultants, folks who are non-lawyers who are giving out legal advice. What happens with folks who are non-lawyers, notarios, immigration consultants is that they will talk to folks and they will then tell folks, okay, here's a route for you. You pay me $20,000 and I promise you'll get a green card down the line. And of course, it's snake oil. No, they've taken their money and then they've left these folks with false hopes, and they've taken their money and then they disappear. And years down the line, folks realize, wait a minute, why do I have a deportation order? I never knew about. Well, it's because that person that you gave that money to applied for asylum for you, didn't tell you that's what you're applying for, and then when your asylum got denied because you didn't show up for your hearing, the judge went forward with your hearing and issued a deportation order. So watch out for notarios and non-lawyers. The other thing that I also suggest strongly for folks, if there is a route for you to get a green card, then find that route and go for it. If you have a green card and you have children who are also lawful permanent residents, you, as a parent with a green card, owe it to your children to naturalize as soon as possible. Because if you naturalize before your child's 18th birthday, they automatically become citizens. Now, I'll tell you a story about one of my clients not too long ago who had this situation. His whole family came over on a green card, and they lived here many, many years. And the parents did have the opportunity to apply for citizenship, and they didn't. And so Junior, unfortunately, got in some trouble with the law later on in his life, and he was still a green card holder. So everyone else eventually became citizens, after his 18th birthday. But because he didn't, because they didn't do it before his 18th birthday, and because by the time he thought about doing it, he'd already been into immigration trouble, criminal trouble that no longer made him eligible for citizenship, he basically had no route to stay in the United States. And so his family's here, and he had to go home. So if you want to protect families, and you know that there are people out there who have green cards and they have children who have green cards, naturalize for the sake of your children. I don't know if that answers the... and be good, decent people.
And I want to say we're going to do something in a minute here, but I would just maybe add to that. Add to that as a fourth one, which I think we do here, and I would encourage you to do on an ongoing basis, and that is not to let our legislators off the hook, because we have to stay on them day in and day out, that we know. See, what we're hearing and what I'm sensing here today, because my committee went through this, it's a learning process about immigration. As you can hear all of the subtext to all of the immigration laws, it's humongous. There's so much to learn, so much to know, and one person may not know all of the answers. So we have to continue to listen and learn, and then not let our legislators off the hook.